And got it. And we are letting everyone in. Awesome. Day 2, session 2, guys, let's roll. This is a lot of fun and a lot of work. But here we are. I'm so sorry we're about 8 minutes late for this session. It has been a lot of fun, but like just on the backstage, you're just always running for the next event. So I apologize for being a little bit late for this session, but I'm super, super, super excited for this powerful session that we're about to have. We have a lot of amazing panelists, and I'm so incredibly grateful for you all to be here. Let's start the introductions. I'm going to give a quick introduction, but I want you guys to all kind of go a little bit deeper into my introduction and tell us a little bit more about you. I'll start kind of like from this, and I see Brian, Joey, and then I see Avery, so we'll go in that direction. Brian is the head of product at App Academy. He has worked in 3 edtech startups, including Pluralsight. He is currently heading App Academy's Open, which is really interesting. And I know it's currently in beta. I don't know if Brian wants me to talk about it, but it's such an interesting and innovative program that I'm so excited for it. But yeah, please tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Navi. Yeah, I'm Brian Green. Right now, head of product at App Academy. And previously, the other companies that I was with Udacity and Pluralsight, and a smaller IT ops focused training platform that got absorbed into Pluralsight through an acquisition. And so I've kind of seen how education in various capacities has really helped to kind of transform and power people's careers. And so I'm hooked on it, love what we get to do on a day-to-day basis. And excited to chat with all of you today. I'm happy to talk about App Academy Open, happy to talk about all of our programs at length, but feel free to rein me in as we can, because not here to promote, more here to promote like the ideas of like transformational education and what I think the possibilities are across all these different forms that I've worked in the past. So not just App Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't think there's going to be a need for pulling you in. I think that a lot of the programs, especially when you're talking about App Academy Open, for those of you that don't know, they've opened up their entire curriculum. It's available for anyone to go there and be an App Academy student for free. And Brian is heading that, and it's really interesting talking to the faculty when they're trying to solve these problems and create innovative solutions on how to make programs available and accessible to a large volume of students, the challenges that they face on their end. I know like some of them I can name is like, how do you motivate students without having the instructors? If you've kind of like made it open and you're not charging anyone anything, then how do you what does that model look like from the business side, where you're still able to kind of like bring in coaches and instructors for that mentorship piece, but then keep it completely accessible? So I would actually love to hear about that.
Yeah, definitely. You want to hear about that right now? Or
yeah, absolutely. Okay, go into
cool.
it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so yeah, as you mentioned, App Academy Open, it's our entire curriculum open, available for people to self-pace through for free. And so yeah, there's a significant number of challenges that students face. We're talking about like a 1,600-hour curriculum that people go through on a full-time basis normally, and that's really how we authored it. So we're really at the outset of like designing a really high quality experience that can help take down some of those barriers, like the self-motivation required to go through it. We have actually seen, since we launched in late 2018, we've seen people complete the curriculum all the way through and get jobs. We've got over 6 people, I think, at this stage who have made it all the way through. But like just in terms of the number of people who don't make it all the way through, it is a high number, and it's primarily because there is that that need for interventions along the way that can help people to stay engaged, to get unstuck. So we introduced this really as an experiment to see, what would happen, and also, to get an increasing amount of feedback help us to consistently improve the curriculum. So we've had some success there, get a lot of feedback from students. We've had over 200,000 people sign up for it, and move through various aspects of the curriculum. And it's allowed us to, make some iterations, but also we've introduced new, kind of services to help people, continue through the program. So one of those is, we had people saying like, I will pay you money, like whatever, however much you need in order to like have somebody to answer my questions. And so we like introduced a very small like subscription fee to, make sure that we can have staff who know the material and can respond to people's questions. We added forums so that, we don't have to answer the same questions over and over again, but can point people to some curated resources. And that's just the beginning. We're thinking about a lot of ways that we can build community into the platform, because we've definitely seen in our full-time and our part-time program that like have who you learn around, and having people that you can collaborate with is super powerful. We've seen people self-organize on App Academy Open as well to like go through the material together. So it's been really inspiring to see, these things kind of happen organically, and inform, ultimately how we're going to, continue to evolve the product. And you mentioned a beta that we're running. We are, since we introduced App Academy Open, we did also launch kind of an online first program. So our original curriculum that we put out in 2018 was for our like in-person 16-week program in San Francisco and New York. And so that was designed to have an instructor taking people through the curriculum like in the classroom. So it wasn't really built, kind of with that mindset. So we've been beta testing our online first curriculum with App Academy Open users, with the idea that like, hey, this was built to be, consumed on your computer, at all hours. And, it's an easier kind of on-ramp, I think, to, a successful learning experience that's, remote first. And so we're excited to be getting feedback on that. But yeah, it's a really exciting product. We've seen signups from all over the world, and yeah, just really a lot of energy around the community that's starting to take shape and form. So it's just the beginning there.
Yeah, no, the reason why I really wanted to bring it up is because I love companies and individuals that think outside of the box when it comes to education. And I think that education, and this is why Monarch and I are such big advocates of boot camps, because, when you look at the traditional model, it's not that like we're both university grads. So it's not that there's something wrong there. It's just that there's so much red tape that innovation is just slower to reach the traditional model. So it's really nice when people kind of take it upon themselves and turn the business of turn education into a business as well as a power of good. So that's why I really wanted you to talk about it. So thank you for that. And I completely agree that there's a community portion to education, and that's really where also Mint Bean fits in. And I think that's why we are so successful, is because we do provide that support. And I think that I think the next decade of bootcamp sector is all going to be about, hey, like what is the community that you provide your students? And I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you for that. To our next introductions, Joey, I'm so thankful for you to be here. I know that you've been on a panel before here for our hiring hackathons. So thank you for doing this a second time around. We love having you. So again, thank you. For those of you that are not familiar with Joey, he's head of engineering at Clorox, and he does tons and tons and tons of mentorship when it comes to junior talent, whether it's, your traditional engineer coming from a comp sci background, or whether it's bootcamp grads, whether it's self-taught or any other non-traditional route, he takes them all in. And he's always kind of like pushing the boundaries of, I know you work in a very corporate structure, but you're always pushing the boundaries of like, hey, like what can I test? Like how can we bring junior talents on this? And a lot of the stuff that you share on LinkedIn, that's what I've said this before, that's what attracted me to have you as part of my network. I'm very conscious of who I follow and who I unfollow at times. Like your feed is it it subconsciously sits with you, right? So the people that you follow and the ideas that they share is a reflection of like your own thoughts. So I really appreciate the value that you bring into my life. But yeah, please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So individual contributor for 15, 16 years. I don't want to show you how old I am, but and then I spent really the last 5 years in people management, the last 3 years building teams. And through different experiences, I've seen different cultures, and I think all of that kind of shaped the type of culture that I would want to be in, the type of culture I would want my team to be a part of. And then I'm not a white male, so and I actually read an article, I think, when I first started building teams, where Asian Americans were the least likely to get promoted into leadership. And so that was something that also resonated with me. I had also just had a son, and I was like, if he ever goes into engineering, I don't want him to be having the same conversations that we're having today. So diversity, inclusion has been a very huge piece of or passion of mine. And then if we think about, where do you start to build that pipeline? It has to start junior, because it's been neglected for so long. It's just not there right now if we think about senior engineers. So I've been very fortunate to work at a company like Clorox that has given me a lot of latitude and kind of free reign in how I build the teams. It's been just a great learning experience. It's been a great opportunity to not just build software, but do something more impactful for tech in general. So it's been very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you, a lot of the insights that you share is that, junior developers are actually very capable of handling complex ecosystems and applications that, is, if you give them the chance, they're worth it. And, I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what has sort of like been because I know you work with a lot of them. So what has like been that one moment where even like you were surprised by how quickly they pick up certain things?
I think I like 5 years ago, I think, was when I had to start hiring people, or was responsible for hiring people. And, we were getting a lot of bootcamp grads, and this was kind of when it kind of first started. And those interviews didn't go well. And, I was honestly at the point where I was like, I just can't interview another bootcamp grad again. And then, it was like the last interview that we had scheduled, and it was she came from General Assembly, and we ended up hiring her, and then she ended up doing a great job. And I was like, what, maybe I shouldn't be so quick to dismiss bootcamp grads. So she kind of really paved the way in a sense for every other bootcamp grad that has come onto my team, and that she was very successful, and was able to come in and immediately make an impact. And I think again, I think that's one of the areas that I've actually hired 4 people. I think 7 months ago, we hired a group of 4 all at the same time. 3 of them were bootcamp grads. One of them was a CS grad, and the 3 bootcamp grads definitely were able to make a more immediate impact.
So you fired the other guy?
Kept him around. We kept him around. And he's definitely, I think there would be different areas where he will have strengths. But like if you think about who can come in day one and just hit the ground running, it's been bootcamp grads, because they're getting a lot more hands-on instruction and knowledge. Then if you really think about like computer science, it's a lot of fundamentals and principles that don't actually translate to making or building software day one. It's a lot of philosophy, and it's, you know, it's science degree. It's not like, you know, but you know, bootcamp is like you learn React, you learn JavaScript, you learn this, you learn how to code. And we built our stack around that so that we could hire bootcamp grads to make, you know, an immediate impact. So, you know, if we were like, you know, these bootcamps are teaching React and JavaScript, if we build our platform off of React and JavaScript, then we can bring, you know, junior people in and they can make an immediate impact. So that all kind of went into like, how do we build our platforms? What technologies do we want to use? How do we want to build our teams? All those kind of decisions, you know, we made kind of upfront.
Thank you for that insight. Appreciate it. You know, it's interesting. Our first session of the day, Lesha from Full Stack, she actually said all you, so she works with a lot of employer partners, and she said that all you need is one bootcamp grad to change the opinion of the employer. And that's usually like where the conversation starts. So that's a really great segue to Every. Every, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for you to talk about Datadog. I think the work that you guys are all doing is fantastic. Every is a technical recruiter. She has led about 122 bootcamp grads into Datadog. So she's definitely our in-house expert on what it's like hiring so many grads in a span of 3 years, and like what you've learned, you know, why you love them so much, why you keep going back to the same talent source. And I'm excited to hear your insights. So yeah, please share something about yourself as well as Datadog.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intro and for having me today. I'm really excited to chat with all of you. I did the numbers like specifically because I was like, I can't say the wrong number. So to date, it's been 122. I was also seeing, I was like, oh, wow, there's also a lot of people that we've brought onto the team that are neither bootcamp grads or computer science grads and have completely non-traditional backgrounds. But that's been in 3 different countries that I've been fortunate enough to recruit for Datadog. So to give an intro on Datadog though, so Datadog, it's definitely a very technical company. It's a technical product, and it's a product that's used by other engineers and developers to really see what's going on in their systems. If a website suddenly crashes, there were some jokes about the Facebook, Instagram going down, and it was like, oh, they need a Datadog. But so it's a very, very interesting product that keeps expanding rapidly using newer technologies, a lot of cloud technologies, which makes it really interesting, especially for newer people to tech to be able to jump in and start learning about containers and Docker technology and things like that. I specifically work on recruiting for our solutions engineers. Our solutions engineers at Datadog, it's very much of a hybrid type of role where it isn't necessarily like a hands down development type of position where you're pushing like brand new product code into production. It's much more so replicating issues, debugging, but you have to have like those principles. You have to be able to read and understand code and be a very technical person. I would have no hopes of doing the job myself. So it's great for bootcamp grads who are interested in kind of merging their previous skills, their soft skills, their customer service skills, a lot of project management skills, everything that kind of you bring to the table with your newfound tech skill. So it's been a really great blend. And to your point, like it only takes like one bootcamp grad. Like I think company wide, even it's really a land and expand model where if you can get one into a company, slowly one team has bootcamp grads, those bootcamp grads will then get promoted into other teams, and it just kind of starts trickling around at the company. So it's starting to happen more at Datadog too, into more of our pure hands down development types of roles. I know people are in technical writing. I know we've hired people into product marketing management who've gone to boot camps, a lot of other types of positions too that still use those technical skills in different ways. But I can talk your ear off about solutions engineering.
That's interesting. You know, you mentioned to me that solutions engineer, like you look for bootcamp grads when it comes to solutions engineering, which I thought was really interesting because my perception of solution engineers was always somebody who had a very deep understanding of applications and systems. And I never like, and like, we run a community where like 90% of our grads are boot camps, and I didn't see them in that category. So when you said that, I was like, okay, that's interesting. So my perceptions are being challenged. Can you go a little bit deeper into that? Like, what is, how is that role defined for a boot camp grad, and like why are they the best fit for that?
Yeah, I know solutions engineering can be definitely a broad title. So at least at Datadog, what they're doing, they're working back and forth with customers. We use Zendesk as our ticketing system. So you're working, communicating back and forth that way. They also get to do demos of the product to prospective clients. That is a great opportunity to for people to really show like their technical skills. Is like, okay, we have this AWS integration. Let me show you how you get set up with that, or Azure, or whatever it might be. So that's a great opportunity too, just to get more of like those skills redefined. Like if you want to go into sales engineering, that type of career path as well. But bootcamp grads bring a lot of skills like just immediately to the table. Like Joey was saying, actually, with kind of like the philosophy versus like the practical use. I've talked to bootcamp grads who have gone both to school to get their computer science degree and then immediately went to a boot camp just to get more of like those skills up front too.
Yeah, we've seen that as well, and we've actually seen people who have done a comp sci background, and then they go in and they'll just layer that up with 12 weeks in boot camp so that they can get more hands-on experience, which is interesting because I could see that, like 4 years you aren't necessarily spending a lot of time building the applications. It's just more theory based. So yeah, I'm excited for you all to be here. This conversation is really meant to be organic, and it's really meant to talk about like what are some of the benefits of hiring bootcamp grads, and how to a lot of our audience is also developers, and we have some employers in here as well, but I really would love for you all to speak to our developer audience and tell them ways of Every, Joey, and of course Brian, you as well, of how do they separate themselves from what the rest of the market is, and what do they bring to the team, and how do they position themselves as the obvious choice. Who wants to take on that one?
I can start. Go
Okay.
background the other way.
Okay.
But something that's always impressed me about bootcamp grads is really like their tenacity, like getting to see their online portfolios, the websites they've created to host their projects, really going the extra mile and really showing like tenacity, grit, and really impresses, I think, us most about how much someone can learn in such a short amount of time. I think like the onboarding and ramping up period for our role is probably like 6 months. And it's a lot of information. They're working with any sort of technology our product integrates with. So we just require one core programming language of people, and like, please learn all the rest, basically. There's definitely a lot of support, training, mentorship, but I think that's the thing that sticks out most to us is how much you put in the effort, the time, and the love for learning.
That makes a lot of sense. You guys would like to add anything to that? I have tons of questions, I promise.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of transferable skills, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that bootcamp grads make is that they, and a lot of times they hide like their past. Like I met someone that created like a completely new LinkedIn account. It's like, this is only going to be dedicated to my software engineering journey. And it's like, why would you hide what you did before that? There's a lot of transferable skills and a lot of transferable knowledge that makes you actually more impactful day one than maybe somebody else. And just one example is we hired a junior QA analyst, but she had so many leadership skills from her past roles that like she's a QA lead now in less than a year. And like you can always catch up on the technical, but those leadership skills that you learn somewhere else, those are things that you just, some people have it, some people don't. And she just, she had it. And it's like, I felt so comfortable and confident to promote her that quickly just because of the skills that she brought with her before she even started. So I think, as a business, there's domain knowledge and then there's technical knowledge. And if you can go to a company and show them that you already have domain knowledge, then I can just focus on the technical side. If you come in and you have technical knowledge, I still have to train you on the domain knowledge. So either way, I have to spend time to ramp you up. So, lean into your background. If you were in accounting, work for a fintech company. If you're in marketing, work for like a direct to consumer or e-commerce company or a MarTech company, like lean into your backgrounds and so that you can have immediate impact day one and show them like, I already know, your business. I'm just a software engineer now and I can, I'm tackling from that direction, but you're not going to have to teach me, how email systems work or what does personalization mean? You're not going to have to teach me like compliance things when it comes to like fintech or healthcare. If you were in healthcare, or a nurse or something, and like all the HIPAA laws, work for a healthcare tech or startup, so that you don't have to train me HIPAA laws. I already know them. I just you'll ramp me up a little bit on the tech side, but these are the things that I bring to the table today. So I would definitely say lean into your backgrounds and find companies that you can add immediate value from maybe the business or domain side, and show them that that's something that they that you bring to the table that a CS grad or someone else fresh out of college won't.
I completely agree. I'm going to keep saying this, but we literally had some of these similar conversations in like the previous session this morning. Monarch actually had mentioned that, we hired somebody from Lowagon and she was, I think she had like 8-10 years of professional experience as a translator, and she was extremely knowledgeable in terms of like as a professional. Yeah, like her tech skills were like they were good, but it was still like junior. But then like within the 8 to 10 months that she was here, she was like she was handling all the other devs, and she was kind of like moving towards that leadership role so quickly, whereas like you wouldn't necessarily think about that with someone who just graduated from like more traditional outlets. So absolutely, Joy, I 100% agree with your sentiments.
Yeah, one thing I would add is I think one of the things that we've gotten feedback from employers that really separates our graduates is like, and bootcamp grads in particular, is just that like accelerated learning that you have to go through in a bootcamp. Like so much information condensed into this tiny period of time, where the majority of time is actually spent like immersed in what it is to be a software engineer versus listening to lectures for hours on end and then going away and doing a project and coming back. Like everything is really tied together into this hands-on experience. But also a lot of our graduates come out like with a desire, like a really, really strong desire to learn more and to continue learning, and with a long list of things that they're like, oh, right after, I'm going to, tackle this first, where is the best resource? And so we can kind of continue partnering with people in that regard. But yeah, that motivation piece and like ability to quickly learn and apply material is something that I think bootcamp grads are like uniquely positioned to do. That yeah, we hear time and time again, and so that's something I'm like always impressed by. Just seeing how quickly people can pick up new topics.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was Avery mentioned something about the fact that like you've hired so many bootcamp grads in 3 years. It blows my mind. I still can't wrap my head around it. I'm seeing this in a lot of different companies that do have a pretty large volume when it comes to just their hiring needs. Some companies like Wayfair and Bloomberg, they've sort of adapted these training almost modules where they're hiring in batches. So they're kind of like hiring like 20, 30. And what this is reminding me of is I used to work in a call center in high school. I'm here in Canada, and we have like five, like with like everything, we have like five. Like we have five telecommunication companies, we have like five banks. I don't know, there's number five just like kind of repeats itself in multiple places. But like the way that the training was done in that organization was you were hired in like a group of 30, and then they would kind of like it was almost like a classroom setting, and they would walk you through like all the different satellites that they had. I was a technical person, like, you know, if your internet went down, so they would kind of like teach you the modems, they would teach you the systems, and I'm kind of like seeing that happen in companies like Bloomberg and Wayfair. And I find that fascinating that they've used like some of the older ways of like how training would happen in a customer service setting now to software engineering. I'm curious like what the training and onboarding piece looks like for Datadog.
Yeah, my first job out of college was at Wayfair, like I was sharing with you yesterday, and that just brought back flashbacks. I think I was in a room starting with people with like 100 other people. It was a pretty big class. But yeah, the training program, I think, is something that's always being looked at and being reworked. So what it was before, actually, when people would start, first week would be a full week of onboarding training. They go through a lot of other kind of benefits trainings and all of that, getting set up with your laptop and everything. And then the next 6 to 8 weeks, it was 1 day a week was a training, onboarding, learning day to take in everything that you've been working on that week, digest. They collected feedback on that, and then now they've reworked it. People want more training sooner, quicker. So now it's the first 4 weeks is all training, all onboarding, still working with your mentor, and you get set up with a buddy too. And that's been a great system. They have the buddy, I think, introduces you to like 3 other people at the company. You have consistent meetings with your mentor. I think for the first couple of months at least. But that's been like a whole process that's been really great that they've been able to make change. We also have a technical enablement team that's helping to focus on the onboarding. We also have a Udemy platform for the business too. So people are able to take any sort of trainings on there, but we're also able to create our own trainings, host those there so that people are able to have like different ways to ingest information. We've also created like a Datadog podcast series for the solutions engineering team. They're very creative people. I think that's another great benefit of hiring bootcamp grads. Now we have podcasts.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it definitely gets more complex than that, but I'd say generally speaking.
That's interesting. You know, it's like we've also noticed that with working with a pretty diverse group of people is that everybody learns differently. Like some people enjoy, you know, going deeper into documentations, whereas other people enjoy the more video format of learning. And there's no right or wrong way. It's just a matter of like how you consume information and like which is your preferred option. So I actually really appreciate that Datadog is not doing just like one model fits all, but it's like, hey, if you need, and I think that like going back to my corporate days, it was like, here's the training and here's like it was like a file. I'm not even kidding. It wasn't even something that you could browse through your browser. And that was like the way that training happened in the corporate world. So yeah, I really value companies that come up with innovative ways to onboard their employees. I want to talk about onboarding because I think this is a very relevant topic. Joey, I want to talk to you about it. And then Brian, what I want to hear from you, just premising you so you can think about this, is not every company is different, right? If you, even if in this call, like the onboarding for Datadog and the onboarding for Clorox and Joey's team is very different. So it's like when you're a bootcamp grad, you don't necessarily know what that's going to be like. You can walk into a company where there's no training and they're like, set up your environment, like, you know, and then like you're just expected to know versus like, okay, like someone is kind of like guiding you through the motions. And I want to know like what the institution and the boot camps are doing to make sure that like the students can count on their, whether it's their instructors, what does that support system look like? Is it there? And if it's not, is that something that you all are thinking about giving your grads so that, so that these companies can say like proudly hiring bootcamp grads? So we'll come to that, but so I want you to think about that question. Joy, can you walk us through what your training and onboarding system looks like?
Absolutely. So definitely something that we evolved and got a lot more formal around as our team continued to grow. But I think we have like probably like 2 weeks set up in the sense of very formal. Here's what you're going to do kind of every day. Starting with, I think, we have like your engineering manager who's kind of is a mentor, but probably going to be more of a coach. We assign you a mentoring buddy that is just, if you have any questions about the company or things outside of anything else, this is the person that you can always rely on. And that's someone that will kind of stay with you your entire time here. But then, we have some very specific projects set up for that quick win. Get my first, we want everyone to kind of push their first code to production within that, the second day of being there. So we have some very low risk projects that we have just kind of set aside for people to take on and get that, I pushed code. I went through that software development life cycle and everything else and get familiar there. But then, we like to not throw them in the fire, but we don't treat people like juniors at Clorox. We treat everyone as, if you want a stretch project or a challenge project, we will give it to you. We will support you through it. If you want to just get some quick wins and build confidence, we will take that route with you. So we literally look at every single person that we bring on the team as an individual. And every engineering manager has weekly one-on-ones with their direct reports. And it's always, how can we better support you? What goals can we set up for you to set you up for success? What does success look like for you? And so, we do have like this, general, here's all the meetings, we probably have like a 2-3, your first week, you'll have probably meet 2 or 3 people at a time, during a virtual lunch. Now, if we were in office, you would probably meet 2 or 3 people at a time for just going out to lunch. But I think it's a lot more digestible if you meet 2 or 3 people at a time than like the entire engineering team, and you hardly get to talk to anybody. So we have those formal things set up, but then it really is, how can we support you? Where would you like to focus? What are you passionate about? Where are you engaged? Some people will say, I want to get promoted within a year, or I want to get promoted within X. Other people are like, I just want to, sometimes just figure it all out, see where it is. We can talk about where I want to be, 3 months from now, once I actually just feel good with where I am right now. So that's kind of our approach to it. And I think everything that we do at Clorox for engineering has been set up to bring in bootcamp grads, in the sense that growing and learning is one of the bigger priorities for us. We have 1 hour every single day set aside for a lunch and learn. And so that can be something as open as let's just do a data structures and algorithms problem or a system design challenge, all the way to we have a workshop set up for that time. But we keep that hour open so that whether it's to take a mental break or you just want to learn something, that time is allotted there. And then again, it's, we're very mindful of, what projects do you want to work on that will get you the experience or will challenge you in the way that you want. We have subscriptions to, Udemy, Educated, Pluralsight, Zero to Master. We have, all these open memberships that are also available for people that just want to learn something quickly or do something outside of work. So we've tried to do everything that we possibly could to set people up for success and to grow and build that into our day-to-day. So, an example there was, we did the lunch and learns because some people they have lives outside of work. So when you say to them, if you
Really? No,
if you want to
life
grow,
outside of work, Joey. What does that look like? Tell me more.
I don't know personally, but
Tell
some
me
people
more.
do. But we got pushback. Like, I don't want to spend 3 hours after my work day having to learn something. How is, are there ways for me to still ramp up quickly, but do that during my normal time? So, that's where the lunch and learn came in. There's at least 1 hour every day. And, as we have one-on-ones, what projects can I give you that align with the things that you want to learn, so that you can use that day-to-day work to actually grow in the way that you want to grow, than just here's things that maybe you already know and you're not really learning anything, and then you're finding yourself have to do it outside of work. So we'll continue to learn how to support junior engineers, and we'll continue to iterate our processes and things like that. But everything we want to do is set people up for success, because I think getting people into tech is not good enough, at least in my mindset. It's keeping them there. And I want to see juniors become mids, and mids become seniors, and seniors become leaders. And if we think about diversity, that's again how we're going to fix that diversity problem when it comes to senior and leadership and engineering 3 years from now, 5 years from now, starting at the bottom and making sure we focus on building them up.
I love that. Man, you said so much. How do I recap that? But no, there's a lot of good there. I think that I agree with you. I saw Monarch's comment. The comments are moving so fast, I can barely keep up with them. I have a question from someone which I want to ask. So if anybody wants to ask a question to the panel, send it to me directly, so that Zoom has a way where I can see those messages in a different way. So do that, please, for my eyeballs. But yeah, like you said something interesting, where you don't treat juniors like juniors, which is something that we don't do either at Mint Bean. And I think when you remove that tag from like onboarding, sort of the autonomy and the relationship with the work changes, and like because there's that fear of like, oh my God, I've never done this before. What if I crash their systems? What if I what if I delete their entire code base, or there's all these like what ifs that are running in the back of your mind. So the fact that you don't treat your developers on your team with sort of like baby gloves is I appreciate that, because I think that that's how you create healthy environment and a team that like really like brings themselves to work, and like is able to tap into their potential as well. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Brian, that question is still pending. The floor is yours.
Yes. Awesome. So trying to recap all of the question, because my mind was going on a few things, and then wanted to piggyback off of something that Joey was saying. So question about, in the cases where there aren't as robust or formal of onboardings, and this terrific support that Datadog and Clorox are able to provide. We do see that a lot, and it happens really at startups, right? Startups many times are just trying to keep the lights on, trying to ship the next thing, and trying to hire as quickly as possible to get people in the door. And so onboarding, to be honest, is many times it's an afterthought for leaders. And having worked at a few startups myself, yeah, you're kind of just scraping by sometimes as a hiring manager, and doing your best, but you really want somebody who can self-direct and hit the ground running. And so that's definitely something that I think, from an instructional design perspective and a curriculum design perspective, that in partnership with employers and understanding what the challenges are when they're bringing in juniors into the organization, we're able to kind of think about some of those things, and how do we prepare people to self-direct and hit the ground running. So I think boot camps largely are thinking about this a lot, of how can we equip people with the skills that I think are kind of two major areas. One would be how do you formulate really good questions? I know we emphasize that tremendously, whenever you're stuck, but also whenever you just encounter any kind of problem, what's a good framework that you can take to really understand the problem? Can you, tackle this? Can you ask for help in the right ways and in a productive way? So that, is absolutely a critical piece that I think bootcamp grads are usually from, having, gone and immersed in this process are like pretty well equipped to do. And the second is, I mentioned earlier of like learning things quickly and like having that kind of self-directed style. So like at App Academy, we've really embraced like a flipped classroom approach where like we have a lot of, pre-recorded video material or readings that students complete on their own, and they come to class and we spend a lot of time actually on like problem solving and troubleshooting and hands-on coding. So that approach really like emphasizes, the ability to like really digest material and craft those like compelling questions, but also that like hunger to get hands-on and troubleshoot. And so we're trying to, really take this approach that doesn't spoon feed people information. That's just not going to work. And that's not what you're going to experience on the job. Like in most cases, you're not going to get like a really robust onboarding. So you're going to hit the ground running with, the need to like self-direct and, find the right information, find answers to your questions. So like, I definitely think that's one thing that I've seen and been really impressed with boot camps generally from being up close to App Academy of like, we're preparing people for that, that success on day one. And it's in partnership with like continuing to try to meet employers where they're at and what they can provide to people. And we're actually like really, pleasantly surprised in cases where, we do see a rigorous onboarding and mentorship program. And where that's missing, we've really like tried to plug in with partnerships to, help organizations understand the benefits there and even, try to fill some of those gaps. I would also say having a strong network with this like cohort model, definitely helps people because, as you're entering job search, at the same time, or, as you're moving through the job search and into the first role, with other juniors, like having that network that you can tap into and ask questions. What are people seeing? What are they, focused on learning? Can also, bridge some of that gap. And I think generally, like, I don't know, in my experience, like employees travel faster than employers in terms of what, people are learning. And so like, I would definitely like, strongly suggest and I've seen in the chat, like everyone's networking here. So always be networking and like continuing to augment that. But like, don't just use it as, kind of a, let's build a numbers, and size, like really leverage and lean into that network and like share what you're going through. A related thing, I think, and that's triggered from what, Joey had mentioned before of like hiding from like what experience people had in the past. I think like what that, brought to mind for me is like imposter syndrome is one of the major things that we see people, struggling with in our programs. And part of it is when you're closer to and you're actually like building things, the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know and how much you don't know. And so I think there is, like a natural tendency to kind of like want to hide behind that and want to only present like the really good stuff and only share with your network, like, hey, here's advice, and be that person who has the answer. But like also being somebody with a question and having, people in your network seeing like how you're learning, like learn in public if you can, and like ask questions, like really, lean on those folks who can support you and help to direct and answer some of your questions because, you may have experienced this while you were in the boot camp, but like often whenever you have a question, you ask a question in front of the whole class, like somebody else is like, I had the exact same question. So I definitely think, that's a major component of where we together, as juniors moving into the, first roles, like can help each other kind of onboard into success in the industry too.
Absolutely. I'm also seeing a number of questions that are coming in. I promise I'm going to get to them, guys. It's interesting. You said something where, you said that App Academy doesn't spoon feed their students. I've been through a bootcamp program. So, and I really genuinely had a great experience with GA. But it was something that I did see where like I made friends with my TA and but it was like inside that program, I would always lean on him. Like every time I got stuck, I would always lean on him. And I remember like at the time, Monarch would like, don't use him as much because you're not going to have him after the boot camp. And then like, you're going to feel, you know, the loss of like not having like a mentor that's like right there every time you run into an issue. Like try to figure out how to solve the problem before you ask you know, your TA or the mentors around you. And I think so that's interesting that like that you guys are advocating for that, so that, you know, if you do run into smaller companies who don't have the resources, you already know that methodology really well of like, what should I be Googling? So, you know, so that I can present it to maybe like that one team lead who's in the entire organization, that might be the CTO, who doesn't have a ton of time to train me, but I can present the problem in a way where that person can digest it really well. And it's like, here's all the number of things that I've done. Here's, you know, here's what I've researched. Here's what I've tried. And then that person's going to come in and say, oh, have you tried this? And then you go back and you try that. So I really appreciate that y'all are doing that. So thank you for answering that difficult question so well. Really appreciate it. Okay, I want to go to the questions, and there's a few of them, so I want to go through them a little bit quicker if that's okay. And please feel free to jump in, like whoever wants to take the question. So Carson is asking, how has the interview process and hiring process changed at your company during COVID? So I think this is more for Datadog and Clorox.
I can jump in unless you want to go, Joey.
Go ahead.
So for us, luckily, we had actually done some remote interviews already in the past. So we had some experience, which was great. So we are doing full remote interviews right now. For our interview process, generally speaking, for solutions engineering, it's a phone interview. Most likely you'll chat with me. Then it would be with someone on the team. That session is really talking to them more about like your technical projects, and they're looking to see like how you explain your technical projects, because they take that as how you'd explain something technical to a customer. Always give a shout out there to boot camps and your coaches, because you get prepped so well, which we definitely see like that difference comparatively to computer science grads, like that preparation and that extra step, where sometimes things can be stronger from the computer science grad, just playing to like their strengths with the technology side, just depending on the person. But you bring so many other skills with the communication, with the preparation. And so I always give a shout out to boot camps there. And I always appreciate it. After that, it's a technical exercise. So that process has been the same, working at home on that. And it's more just exploring Datadog, the product. And then after that, there's like a final interview day. It's all on one Zoom. So we're like, let's not have the candidates switch in and out of the Zooms. They can be on one, we'll switch in and out and let the next person know on Slack when it's time for them to jump in. So that got figured out pretty early on. And then we do have people do a coding interview during that final day. And we use CoderPad. So more of like a virtual text editor. You're probably all more familiar with it than I am. But so that we'd actually started using before, because we felt it was a little bit more natural for people to type it instead of like write everything out on like a whiteboard. We don't need to judge like good handwriting. So for us, luckily, it was pretty easy to switch over. But I'm sad people don't get to see the office.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that like tech is probably the one industry that felt the transition to remote probably the least. Like, you know, I think it happened overnight and we didn't really feel much of an impact, unlike other sectors, unfortunately. Joey, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. Yeah, we didn't change much for us either, in the sense that by the time we really were ramping up on our hiring and building out the team, I was located in Maryland, and it wasn't a great place to source technical talent for whatever reason. We struggled a lot. So we were already, you know, a lot of our hiring was for people in San Fran or New York or some of the other bigger areas where there just seemed to be better talent. So even before COVID, we were perfectly happy with building out remote and distributed teams. So our process was already built around that. And just on the juniors, so when we hire for associate or software engineer 1 roles, it is for us an entry-level position. We actually won't take people that actually have more than like 1 year of experience to apply for those, because entry level should mean 0, and we don't want people like 1 or more taking those types of roles that really should be for people trying to get into tech. So, but we'll do a coding exercise if we have a lot of really great candidates, and we can't. If like we had like 3 or 4 that we really liked, we will do a coding exercise to try to see if one will kind of set themselves apart. But most of for junior for us, we're focusing mostly on culture. So most of our interview process is behavioral around the culture that they'll bring to the team, and then a very, very foundational knowledge of our core technologies. So React, JavaScript, but things that a lot of bootcamp grads should kind of have a ton of experience in already. But even us, we think we can do a lot better at our interview processes and things that we're looking at now. A lot of things that we've seen that we love from other companies is having a ton of I think the question is, are you setting a candidate up for success? And it's not just we're trying to interview people, but did you build your interview processes around does this candidate feel like we actually really want them to be successful and get through this interview process and get hired? So some of the things that we're working on now is getting a lot more documentation, so that we can, as soon as we talk to someone, we can this is the process. Here are materials that you can study that will, prepare you for how to get through this process. But we want people to feel as comfortable, as relaxed as they can. And then just one thing that I heard that really resonated with me in terms of what kind of why I want to improve our interview process was, we don't want someone to be nervous, because we're not trying to test, are you a software engineer? We want to test who are you? We want to get to know you and your authentic self, and who are we really hiring? And it's hard to show up in that way if you're extremely nervous, or you don't know what to expect, or you have all that stress of interviewing. So how can you make the process as stress-free as possible, so someone can actually show up as who they are, and you really can get to know, who would we be hiring, and not who is this really stressed out person that isn't being able to put their best self on display.
Dude, I love that. I think that sometimes people, oh man, you just kind of blew my mind there for a second. It's the conversation of why hiring developers this is exactly that question, right? Because you're hiring a knowledge worker, B, you're not hiring for a business role, right? So this person is coming in and they actually have a hard skill, so you're looking for that, almost like a technical smell. You're not necessarily looking for can they code in Node? Can they code in Python? Can they code in Vue? You don't give a shit about the languages, right? If you know what you're doing, if the technical team inside your company knows what they're doing, you're not really looking for languages. What you're looking for is, can this person learn? What is this person? How does this person solve problems, right? And because hiring has never been done like that, it's employers are having such a hard time, and especially when you scale that upwards, right? The startups are doing it well because their team is so small. There's only 1 or 2 touch points with the candidate, which is from the resume screening to the technical person, usually is a very quick turnaround. Whereas the bigger companies, kind of where you two fit in, is you have an entire HR team, right? Who has their own sort sort of like departments, like Avery, you're a technical recruiter. You're talking to them once their resume has been like, they qualify on the resume level, and are you the first point of contact? Are you the first point that they talk to, or are you the second or third?
I'm the first.
You're the first. Okay. And what about you, Joey? Where do you fit in?
So I'm actually the first.
You're the first. Really? No way. I find that hard to believe.
So Clorox has talent acquisition teams, but they are very focused on like marketing, sales, and those types of roles. So we don't have technical sourcers. I take that role on because I want people to have a good first experience when they talk to us, and not talk to someone like, oh, is someone going to test me that doesn't even know technology? Like I went through that process when I felt like I was talking to someone that didn't really understand technology, but this is the person interviewing me, and it always threw me off. So I want someone to this is someone that knows what they're talking about, can really evaluate me at a good level and give me the best opportunity to show what I can do. So it doesn't scale. Like if we had to go to like 100 or 1,000, then I'm definitely going to have to go to Clorox and be like, you really do need to hire some technical sourcers and build that capability out. But for the scale that we had, just something that I took on out of, again, need, but also I like staying kind of close to that because it's a passion. So, I want everyone to have a good experience. Even if they don't get the outcome they want, at least they learned something from it. They came out knowing that there's things that they can work on. What are those things? And that there's, it's not as scary maybe as some people think it is.
I love it. I'd love to see what that onboarding documentation looks like. I want to replicate that. So that sounds like a lot of fun. Brian, you've worked on 3 different, now 4 different ed tech companies, and all of them have scaled while you were there. One of them turned into a unicorn. That means that a lot of people came in through the door as you were there. What was sort of the, and that means whether it was on the engineering team or the business team, what was your perspective as the team grew? What are some of the things that you can share with our developer audience of what you saw worked?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, so for context, at Pluralsight, I came through in an acquisition when there were about 40 employees, and I came with a cohort of about 40 into that company. And then when I moved on, it was about 1,500 employees. So it was just massive growth from under 100 to 1,500 people. And some of it is, super chaotic, and it's really exciting to go through that amount of growth. I think it was really interesting. Some of the things that we've talked about with not having onboarding to having a really formal onboarding. I watched the organization bring that on, and it was definitely awesome to see a lot of heavy emphasis on the culture and the ways that the business wants to work, and why we're in business and doing the things that we're doing. So I think that helped everyone to have kind of an aligned sense of mission. And so I think I guess maybe that's a perspective that I would encourage people as you're evaluating companies, because that's really, as you're going through a job search, you're evaluating them as much as they're evaluating you. Is to look for is there a strong culture of purpose and mission around why we're doing what we're doing, why we exist, because at the end of the day, you're going to run into frustrations, you're going to run into long days where you're just grinding on a project that is so zoomed in that you lose sight of that big picture. So if you don't have something that at the end of the day you can come back to, which for me it's I love that what I get to do matters. It's helping people to make a transformation in their life. I can get through a long day of meetings, if I can, lean into that at the end. So I would say try to, really evaluate what are some of those things that really resonate with you, and pattern match with that organization? Like, do they seem to have a strong sense of that? I would also say, I think, honestly, like the ways of working changed dramatically at different times. So what I mean by that is organizational structure. Like reorgs happened all the time. People got reassigned, from working on one particular team to another. Company priorities would sometimes change as we, chase new opportunities. Like if you're going into a startup, like just go in with eyes open that like the business is going to be growing like crazy, and very frequently will chase interesting opportunities and projects that like some of them don't pan out. So you can't really like get too attached to necessarily like what you're working on, but again, like to that North Star, and like trying to figure out ultimately how the business can thrive best. Like that's part of the game there. So those are a few things, I guess, that kind of stood out to me from that experience of going from very small to quite large.
Yeah, no, that I can attest to that as well, because like as a small company that's trying to scale, like we run into those issues all the time where you're bringing in people and you don't necessarily have it's like you're going to be doing this and that's all you're going to be doing. So you're kind of like, and we've noticed that like there's our hiring strategy has kind of like evolved quite a lot actually from when we first started, and we've noticed that like certain people do really well in our organization that don't need structure, that like are able to sort of adapt to the changing environments. And as like you said, when you take a company of 50 or like 40 and you turn it into 1,500, that means the business has changed, right? So every single team, including development, is going to be like pivoting into like, we're doing like, you're thinking of scale. You're taking a small company and you're throwing them into this like massive fire. There's a lot of changes that kind of like go with that, right? So I love like what you said about doing a sort of sorry, I forget the word that you used, but like sort of like doing an analysis of like, do I fit in with this company? Like what are they currently doing? What problems are they solving? And it's like the person on the other end, whether it's Joey or whether it's Avery, like they can hear that, right? Like, so and coming to that question, Avery, like when you talk to a candidate, like what excites you? Like how do you like what do they say or what do they not say? When do you push them forward, and when do you say like maybe the engineering team doesn't want to meet this person?
Yeah, I definitely look for someone who has more of that passion, more of that excitement, someone who is excited about the role, specifically for a solution, since it is client facing. I know not everyone wants to be in that type of role. So trying to make sure that's a good fit and they'd enjoy their day to day, because that's pretty important for people. But also I think talking about your projects, and I know that I saw a question in the chat too about how they describe their projects and all of that. And so I'm actually really curious to hear, Joey, your input on that question and how you like to hear candidates explain their projects. But I'm interested in hearing like, okay, well, if you're troubleshooting with your project, how did you kind of get around those issues? What kind of methods did you use? Did you sound like you're really struggling? Did you enjoy debugging your project? Did it sound like you hated doing that? Since our job is a lot of debugging. So that's one thing that I look forward to, but I'm also really curious to hear your answer, Joey, on that.
I'm not, I think, in general, we look at people that, how did you go above and beyond the boot camp? Like, I think there's some people that are like, I went to every class, I did the projects, I left. The people that we're really excited to talk about, like, I had this project and I got it done, but like this piece of it just kept me up all night because I wanted to do it better than what the instructor told me to do. And like, those are the people that I want to talk to, because those are the ones that actually like have more passion, grit, and curiosity. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I want to find is curiosity. And I think we've talked about this before, but you have to be curious if you want to be in tech, because tech is constantly changing. There's constantly new ways that people do things, new opinions about how to do things. And if you can't find the curiosity in yourself to always want to dig in and go deep into those things, it's going to become a drag at some point for you to be in tech, because if you don't keep learning, you do get left behind fairly quickly. So you have to have that passion and that curiosity to help you keep up to date, to help you want to constantly learn and try new things and innovate. So we look for that. But I think when we talk about projects, I would rather you do one project and refactor it and iterate on it constantly than 10 CRUD projects that are all just different variations of CRUD. Because what I want to hear someone be able to talk about is, this is how I did it the first time. This is the decisions that I made. And then this is why I refactored it, because I thought I could do it better this way, or these are the trade-offs that I made. So, I think get very good at being able to talk about your thought process and why you did the things and why you built it the way that you built it, because that is what you're going to have to do day to day. More than any data, I'm not going to get into how much I hate data structures and algorithms and that form of testing, because it doesn't set you up for success in your actual day to day. But if you could talk about, I built it this way because I thought about, if I use this type of database, it's better suited for the data that it's getting stored. And I built this because I used this language because I think it was the best language for what I was trying to build. That shows me that you actually you can solve problems. You can ask thoughtful questions. You're on the right track of how do I break complex problems down into simple tasks. So, a lot of people, it's like, I don't know how many people see it on LinkedIn, like the 30-day challenge or the 100-day challenge, and I'm going to run one thing every day. I would rather you build one thing and again, refactor it, iterate, and be able to talk about all the decisions that you made with that project than 100 things, one thing every day. That's so small that, what are you really going to point to and say, this was different, or this was challenging, or this was new? Versus a big project that you worked on constantly and say, these were all the decisions that I made, all the trade-offs that I made, these are the challenges that I had. Talk about the thing that you love the most about it. Like, let the passion come out, like build something that you're passionate about. So when you do talk about it, that passion just naturally comes out because it's something that you had fun building. But I want to see that passion. I want people that are excited. But then at the same time, you have to balance, some people are just shy. How do you not disqualify them? So it's tough, but if you can really show that you're passionate and curious, those are the things that will make me want to just, hire someone and just, let me see what they have and give them an opportunity.
I love that. What's really interesting, guys, is that these are two different decision makers in the same hiring process. One person is usually the first point. I know this is two different organizations, but usually there's like one person who makes that first phone call that's looking for like the technical recruiter that's looking for the cultural fit, and the language that they're looking for is different from the engineering. Right? The engineering team or the engineer. And like, so I just kind of want you guys to premise some of these insights and how you interact with the different decision makers when it comes to hiring. I want to go back into some of the questions that are being asked. Some people have put a lot of thought into these, so I do want to get back to them. Austin asked something kind of interesting. I think about starting a first junior or associate position and how much of an impact it can potentially have on the rest of your journey because of how sponge-like you are with learning and developing. Could you touch on red flags or things to be wary of in trying to avoid situations where you could potentially develop bad habits or techniques?
I take a quick stab at this one. I think you do need to be careful with that first role because it is extremely influential in terms of the habits that you build, but also the support that you get. If you join a company that's not going to support you, it can either really hurt your confidence and maybe make you not want to stay in tech, or at the worst case, or the best case, you learn or you grow a lot slower than maybe if you were as somewhere else that would have supported you. So your career can get set back if you don't go to the right place on the first time. And I would, things that I would look at, and I think it's a lot easier nowadays, is do some research in your company. If you look at any company on LinkedIn, it will tell you the people that work there. How many, look at how many bootcamp grads or junior people that they have, and look at, look at the pictures and how diverse is this team that you're joining, and reach out to people. Like, that's the beauty of LinkedIn. If you want to work at this place, search this place, find employees that work there and ask them. I was thinking of applying to some of the roles here. What do you think about the culture here? Do you feel like when you started, you were set up for success? And did you feel supported by your manager? And, you can ask these questions now, and you can find people that work at these target companies that you have. So I would say do your research there and find a company that really will support you and set you up for success. I think it's extremely important to find that, especially early on in your career.
Excellent point. There's Avery, there's a question for you from Imtaz. It's to do with the solutions engineering role. I'm going through some of the questions, and if like we talked about it, I'm kind of going through over them. So this person is asking, like, sometimes I get offered these roles, but I'm wondering if this is a good path as a first role, if I'm looking to diverge more into a developer role in the future. This is an interesting question because a lot of bootcamp grads, I don't know, Brian, if you've seen this trend as well, a lot of bootcamp grads are also being offered developer advocate and developer relations roles, which is like, traditionally that role gets opened up sort of towards like the later end of a developer's career, where like they understand the problems that the developer community is having and then talking to their peers. So it's like, what would you say about, going towards roles that are not necessarily where they're as a first role, where you're not really dealing with the code all day long?
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely think we've experienced some people who like come out of a boot camp and they're actually looking for a little bit of a break, or they have clarity of, I don't know if I do want to spend 40 plus hours a week in the code, so maybe let me try something that's adjacent to that, get a sense for like what real software engineering looks like in the field, maybe from a little bit of a distance. And so yeah, I definitely think boot camps can be a really good way of kind of opening up more opportunities that exist kind of around software engineering. Like I would also just offer from my experience, like I hired somebody at Pluralsight. I had a team who was in like content development and technical content review, and one of the best hires I ever made was somebody who came out of a boot camp and was just like, that's not for me. Like, I don't want to do this all the time, or at least not now. I'm not ready for, that kind of a career step. And, so things that, kind of hover around software engineering and software engineering education, or technical education more broadly, like, there are opportunities, I think, to slot in and use some of those skills and maybe, in a different way than might be more readily apparent going through a boot camp. But also we did, task that individual with writing a lot of automations and a lot of code for solutions that ended up, kind of making it into production software systems. And then, he was able to move into a full-time engineering role, after a couple of years of, working on my team. And so like, you just kind of never know, and what ends up happening.
Yeah, I agree. Avery, I want to hear your comments as well on this. I do agree. I didn't actually go down the path of being a developer. I have a very strong business acumen. So when I decided that I didn't want to be in corporate, it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying the business of it. It's just there was a cultural mismatch, and I wanted to be in a different industry, but I didn't have the skills to be in the tech industry because I didn't get it. Like, I didn't get how applications are built. It was a black box for me. So I wanted to understand like the business of tech. And in order to get there, I needed to understand the development piece, and then come back to like, okay, well, where do I want to take this now? And I see that in a lot of people who come out of the cohorts but a lot of them do want to become developers, and that's great. And that's the path they should follow. But a lot of them are kind of like looking at it and they're like, tech has so much to offer, right? Avery mentioned sales engineering, which is a really interesting role, and it's like really in demand right now. So there's like developer advocate, developer relations. I've seen people who do the SEI program and then go into UX UI design because, you know, they like that aspect of it a little bit more than just the development piece. So it's like really interesting how like we're seeing these niches form. But yeah, I can ramble about this for a while. Sorry, Avery.
No, that's okay. Definitely resonated with what Brian was saying, that some people definitely don't exactly want that hands down coding all day type of position, or they're not ready. They kind of want to explore and try to figure out like what exactly like their path is going to be. I definitely say like if you are trying to explore, you're applying to companies, try to apply to roles then that get you exposure to other departments, so that you can just see what's out there. What are the other opportunities like for you in tech, not locked into like this one role the next 50 years of your life. I'd say if you're thinking that you really do want to be like a hands down developer, you'd be sad not doing that as your next role, then it's probably not the best role for you, just because you wouldn't enjoy your everyday. And that's definitely something that's really important. One program that we do have in place too for our solutions engineers at the company too is our embed program. And so for when people have been here for at least about a year, they have the opportunity to fully embed into another team at Datadog. They're assigned projects like them, help just get more diverse experience. So we have definitely had people who have gone into a hands-on development position. We've had people go into sales engineering, which is a very lucrative path to take in life. I would not dismiss it easily.
They get paid really, really, really well, by the way, guys. Like, holy shit, like really well.
So I definitely recommended it. We've had people also go into product managers. I mean, that's such a hot job for people to have. I feel like so many people want that position. So that's a really great exposure in this type of role if you're looking at like a path like that in the future, because you have to work with so many different stakeholders at the company. They're working with our customer success teams, they're working on escalations, bug requests, all sorts of things with our engineering teams, with our specialized teams, with our sellers for the demos. So I think looking at a role, depending on like what your next few steps are and how that role could help you get there, but not wanting to jump too soon where you wouldn't enjoy your role.
Yeah, no, that's fair. We're at the top of the hour, guys. But I'm gonna ask one last question to roll us out. There were so many questions in the chat. We didn't get to all of them. I'm so sorry, guys. It's just been a really interesting conversation, and I hope that we can answer those questions in other places. I would definitely make connections with all three of them. Send them your questions, and I'm sure they will not mind answering them, as long as you answer them or you ask them in a gentle way. But we have our networking session that's coming up, our last networking and recruiting session of the day. Panelists, if you guys can join, please do. This has been a lot of fun. This is the second session, and I'm so excited to bring this conversation. Bootcamp grads they hold a very special space in my heart, me being one of them, I think. And it's like I think that there's a lot of good that they bring into tech, and more, I think the conversation of companies that are starting to hire them and seeing the power of what the grad brings is increasing every single day and every single year. So that to me, that's like music to my ears, and I love hearing that. So thank you for sharing your insights. But before we wrap up, I do want to mention that tomorrow's conversation is one of that might not interest everybody on the call. It's about curriculums. It's a niche subject that is not talked about and mainstream of like what goes into building the curriculum. Why is it so powerful, especially for employers? How does it work? We have actually somebody from App Academy who who's been in curriculum for a very long time, was in game development for a long time. And then we also have a chairman who was for 26 years. He was a chairman of computer science and software engineering at Cal Poly University. And then he's now he's like, I forget his role, director of something. I'll have to look that up inside of Full Stack. So it's going to be really interesting that the conversations that are going to take place regarding the space race of the mind. So I'm excited about that. And then followed with Glass Ceiling. And that's going to be on Twitter. And we're going to be talking to grads like yourself who are sort of breaking the norms and going beyond just the lip service of like BIPOC and LGBTQ groups. What does diversity look like when, you put in the clothes that you wear or the accent that you have? So I'm excited about that conversation, but let's roll this out. Is there anything that you'd like to share with each of you with one last tip for the developers in the group of like how to stand out in the interview process? Whether it's the portfolio, whether it's the resume, or whether it's, what you're saying on that first person who calls you or the engineering team. Anybody?
I'd say be yourself, be your authentic you. It's going to be valued.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would echo that in the sense that you don't want to work. Do you really want to work for a company where you have to pretend to be something different? So definitely look for the companies that talk to you and make you feel like I can be myself. And then I would say focus when you are interviewing or when you are talking to people, focus on how you can make an impact versus trying to focus on how do I tell someone how much technical knowledge I am. Sell your impact versus what do I know right now.
That's interesting. Sell your impact versus you need to tweet that, man. That's a solid tweet or like a slogan. Brian, take us out.
Yeah, I would just echo that. Focus on solutions. Like if you're talking about your code, talk about what it's doing and why it's doing what it's doing. But yeah, focusing on what you're attempting to accomplish. And when you're talking about experience, yeah, really emphasize like problems, like what were you tasked with doing? How did you approach it? And what was the result?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you everyone for listening. I know it's been a long day. If you've attended both, really appreciate it. And I'm excited about the networking session. Please do attend. If you're looking to meet recruiters, or even talk to your peers. Panelists, really, really appreciate you all being here. Thank you for making this experience what it is. We couldn't have done this without you. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely.
everybody.
Oh, sorry, Avery, you have the QR. So there's open jobs at Datadog. And how can they apply?
Yeah, so that'll bring you right to the main careers page. Specifically, the solutions engineering role is in the technical solutions page. But any roles you want to apply to, please feel free.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys.